right, guys, welcome to the Ravit Show. And I hope you guys had a great weekend and ready for the session today because we have some amazing guests joining us. It's none other than Dean, co-founder and CEO at DagsHub, and Guy, co-founder and CTO at DagsHub. So today we will be discussing about their journey, how to align your data science projects, data science, and much more. So feel free to have your questions coming in because Dean and Guy are here to not only educate us with DagsHub, but also why data science projects are important. How is it important? How do you actually, how is data DagsHub? But not only DagsHub, but how has their journey been in the data science field, and why will it be important for you guys to actually get into the data science field and the data science projects. So feel free to have your questions coming in. I am just checking if our chat works. Yes, our chat works. Christian is already here, so which is amazing. And a little about our guest. Dean has a background combining physics and computer science. He's worked on quantum optics and communication, uh, computer vision, software development, and design. So a lot of stuff that he has done. He's currently the CEO at DagsHub, where he applies his multidisciplinary background to build products that enable data scientists to work together and get their models to production using popular open source tools. He's also the host of MLOps podcast, where he speaks with industry experts about ML in production. So that's one of the core reasons I'm super excited, because it's from a host to another host, and that would be super fun. Little about Guy. Guy is a tech geek at heart and has spent most of his life working on various fields in tech, software, information security, data engineering, DevOps, and machine learning. He enjoys using his varied experience to find patterns and bring new insights and useful tools to the world. Guy is currently the CTO and co-founder at DagsHub. It's a platform that makes it easier for teams of data scientists and machine learning engineers to collaborate, especially on open source projects. So as I mentioned, feel free to have your questions coming in. And also a very cool announcement that we are giving away. And Dean and Guy has been super kind to offer two swags of DagsHub. So what you guys need to do is just type in hashtag DagsHub in the chat, and we'll be announcing two winners. One would be somewhere during mid of the show and one towards the end. So stay tuned and type in hashtag DagsHub. Also keep your questions coming in. But without any further ado, let's have our guest here. Hey Dean, hey Guy, such a pleasure. You guys are looking fantastic, and I really like your setup. So very welcome to the Ravit Show, and can't wait to obviously hear your journeys and hear more about how to align data science projects, about data science, and about the open source, the field completely. So why not start with your introductions? Maybe Guy, you can go first.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having us. This is a really impressive operation. I have to hand it to you. And this is, by the way, a pilot for the improved podcasting rig for Dean. So I hope it works well. Yeah, so hi, I'm Guy. And I don't have a lot to add to your very detailed introduction, except, yeah, basically what I like doing is taking we'll get maybe into this more later, but taking the best things that I've experienced in like DevOps and data engineering and trying to bring the good things about it into machine learning while leaving behind the things that don't fit, like not just, head into the wall, but actually think about it. And yeah, I'll hand it to Dean.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so Ravit, thank you for having us. It's really a pleasure. I know you said I'm hosting my own podcast. I think I mentioned this somewhere, but no matter how many times you are a host, it's always a bit different to be a guest. So it's good. I'm re-experiencing how it is to be a guest on a podcast. Keeps me on my toes. So
Amazing.
yeah, I'm Dean, one of the founders of DagsHub with Guy, and I guess the interesting things that aside from what Ravit already said, is that my approach is I like to do a lot of things. It's sort of part of my approach to life is that if I'm doing a small amount of things, I'm usually not as happy as I could be. And so, in a sense, starting a startup was let's say, something I wanted to do a long time before I started DagsHub. And part of the main reason is that over 1 week, you can do 7 different things and do them very deeply. And so I really enjoyed that. I think that's part of sort of what brings me to DagsHub and the entrepreneurship world in general. What else is interesting? Yeah, that's me. So I'm happy to talk about startups, happy to talk about machine learning, and happy to talk about quantum physics, which, as you mentioned, it's not really related to what we're doing at DagsHub, but still something I really enjoy talking people's ears off.
Okay, that's fantastic. Great introductions and great. Definitely, I would love to hear the backstory about how you both started DagsHub. But and DagsHub is the talk of the town, and everywhere that I see is people having their projects on DagsHub. I know for a fact there are so many friends out there who are like, DagsHub is our place now. So can't wait to obviously hear the story. So can you tell us how did you both come up with the idea of DagsHub? And I know for a fact where Guy comes from a geek background, like the tech geek, and Dean is more like the guy who's around the place and a true CEO. So would love to hear this background story.
Okay,
I'll let you start.
Yeah, so where do I start? So first of all, some information. Dean is also a tech geek. He has better taste than me. He's like a designer of the team. So I'm more the backend data pipeline DevOps kind of guy. And about how we started this. So first of all, a bit of background that we didn't mention. Dean and I have been friends since kindergarten. So like,
wow,
yeah, for about 26 years. And yeah, Dean is my dad's like foremost student in martial arts, and it's like we go a long way back, and and that's how we know each other. So we've always done stupid shit together, and DagsHub was the opportunity to bring it to a new level, which is much more serious. Yeah, I've been programming since a very young age. I just always knew that's what I like to do and what I want to do with my life. And Dean just is a self-taught designer and programmer and lots of other things. So it fit in well. But about how we got specifically to DagsHub is a few things happened at the same time. So I was working as a kind of one of the early few developers in a startup called Glassbox as kind of a backend / data engineer / DevOps. You know how it is in startups, you do everything. So I was doing that and trying to, and like handling a very serious data pipeline there, like need to ingest and index like 1 gigabyte per second traffic. And that was interesting. Not that easy. And also doing machine learning on top of that data. And that's where I kind of got the developer side of it, like the production side of machine learning, because it was relatively basic machine learning, but the principle was the same. And while doing that, I was also working on a master's degree, like taking 1 day a week off work to I wanted to like do a research, do a thesis on deep learning. And that was kind of the setup. Dean had just finished his own bachelor's degree in physics and computer science, and what I experienced while trying to, like, we had a very intense seminar where we were supposed to like go into teams of students and first of all reproduce state-of-the-art deep learning papers, and secondly try to like create novel research, like slight modifications, but do that in a team. And I basically found out that I don't know how to work together in a team of researchers. Like I would, I'd go to Google Colab and start writing code there. But when it came to, okay, this is what I did, and now take that and continue working on it, and then let's see how we combine the results and everything, I basically couldn't figure out an effective way to do that with the other members of the team. And I ended up saying, okay, like I don't know, I'll work on this, and when I'm done, and I'll just give it to you. But I don't know how to split the work, and like maintain our sanity. And because I was always like the Git guy, the DevOps guy in every company that I worked in, I kind of got angry at myself, like why am I working in this stupid way? Because I know I can do better. So I assumed that working data scientists, because I wasn't a professional data scientist, I was a developer, that working data scientists have solved this because they're very smart people. So I Googled and looked around, and basically what I found was a bunch of people complaining that they have the same problems that I described, and that there's no known solution, there's no good way to solve it. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. That's weird. And as I said, Dina just finished his degree. I was just also in the middle of like some changes, and we said, okay, let's try to investigate this problem more deeply and see if we can't convince ourselves that this is not a real problem. Double negative, but that was the philosophy. Like, okay, let's try to kill the idea, and we tried hard and failed because it was a real problem, and we got a lot of like feedback from people like, oh my god, yes, like this is exactly what I've been talking about and looking for. And we basically did a month-long hackathon, 1 week at my house, Dean sleeping on my couch, 1 week at his house, and we did a 1 month hackathon and launched the first version of DagsHub, and went out to the world, basically. Dean, anything?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, so Guy tells like the origin story of the idea perfectly, and I think that's sort of the main part of the story. I'll just say that just if there are people in the audience that are listening and want to consider now or in the future building a startup themselves, like from my perspective, doing something like DagsHub was in the works for a very long time. Like I remember in Israel, we have a mandatory army service, and I remember getting out of my service and telling my parents, like, I'm not going to study anything, I'm going to start a startup. And they told me like, no, wait, maybe if you study something, you'll have better ideas for startups. And in the end, they convinced me. And I'm happy that I studied what I did. Like for me, going to university was basically, I vividly remember that originally I had a plan to study electrical engineering. And I ended up studying physics and computer science, like combo, because someone told me, like, why do you want to study electrical engineering? And my answer was, because I'm very interested in physics and computer science. So he told me, then just study both. And that's what I did. And it was a great decision because I had, like, for me, the stated goal for university was I wanted to understand quantum mechanics and machine learning at a non-pop sciencey level. Like, I think pop science is awesome. I follow a ton of YouTube channels and things like that, but I wanted a level deeper understanding. And so that's what I did. But after I finished my studies, I basically went out and said, like, there's no way I'm doing anything which is not starting a startup. And so the combo of those two stories are basically how we got to DagsHub today.
Okay, this is fantastic. And starting from obviously the childhood, since you guys have known each other for forever already, This seems to be a very inspiring story and great insights. Thanks for sharing all those details. We have a few comments coming in. Obviously, we have a comment which is kind of coming in, and which is DagsHub. For those who are just joining us, to give you a sneak peek, and just to remind others that we are giving away two swags from DagsHub, and we'll be announcing the first winner towards the mid of the show and the one towards the end. Also, we have comment about there were questions around how did you come up with the idea of DagsHub. So now we already know that, but what was the inspiration to start? Like, I know for a fact where Guy had his own experiences, but Dean, were there like specific experiences that you had around and you would want to share with the audience about the inspiration?
Yeah, so I vividly remember, like as Guy said, when we started out, we were in hackathon mode. So it actually, like the hackathon mode started a bit before we actively started working on DagsHub. So I remember this week I was staying at Guy's place. By the way, at the time, like when we started, we were, I think, over 2 hours drive away from each other. So it was like an effort. We weren't like neighbors, and this was a walk. And every time, so I remember this week I was at Guy's place, and we were talking about like different ideas that we had in this area. And I think Guy mentioned specifically, like the place we started was not like building a solution for collaboration and machine learning. Like that sort of, we progressed into that and realized that that's sort of the crystallization of the idea that we wanted to work on. But to begin with, I remember Guy was just saying like, we had experiences working on machine learning projects, but I don't think I ever found a place which is like GitHub for people doing machine learning. Like GitHub is clearly lacking things that data scientists need, and there's a gap there that needs to be solved. And then I remember like going back to the projects that I did in my studies. Like my comfort zone in machine learning is computer vision. I'm in general like very like curious about getting computers to create beautiful things. So like specifically GANs and things like that really interest me. But I remember going back to the projects that I did do and realizing that like I would upload half of my project to GitHub, but then half of my project would have to live in some other place. And I didn't even, like, as Guy said, he's the more DevOps oriented one of us. So I didn't even think about this twice. But the moment Guy said that, it was like, oh, wow, there was like a whole chunk of the information in my projects that didn't exist like in any place of record. So if I wanted to work with other people, I had to send those over via like Google Drive or email or annoying stuff like that. And then once you start thinking about it, it's like one of those things you can't unsee. So the moment you start thinking about the fact that if you work on a machine learning project, you're basically, putting aside like today in DagsHub, but at the time, you were basically making a conscious decision that a major part of your work had no place to live. Like it's going to live on your computer and that's it. And so the moment you see that, you're like, okay, shit, like there has to be something that is like GitHub for people doing machine learning. And that's basically how that's what led us to double down on this.
I guess the aspect we didn't mention is the whole open source aspect, which is like, I was thinking more like when I was talking now about in terms of a team in a company, but it sucks that so much even open source machine learning projects are not really reproducible. And partly it's about like incentives in academia and everything, but part of it is just technical because like it's hard to share your data. It's hard to tie your code to your experiments and your data. And that's the thing that I wanted to say. Okay, like if I want to publish and like thought experiment, say you want to publish a fully reproducible open source machine learning project where anyone can come in and contribute to it and not just like fix bugs in the code, but actually modify the data and actually submit new experiments and new models and compare the results. There's just no real way to do it. Not in a way that you can actually, like there's Kaggle, you can create a completely like a fork and do stuff there and generate some notebook with results, but it doesn't in the end like come back to something usable that people can then like pull the latest version of the model and use it in their own projects. And one of the things I remember in my master's, I went to a professor. He was teaching like intro to machine learning or some more advanced course. And I was like, oh my God, neural networks are so amazing, because now we can have NPM for neural networks. Like I can, unlike the like old models which just have 1 or 0 output, like in a neural network, I can create an embedding layer, and I can use autoencoders, and I can like have modules which I don't have to train the whole pipeline. Like I can train an autoencoder for images, and then on top of that, do all kinds of other use cases. And I was like, why don't we make an NPM for neural network parts? And he was a professor, and it wasn't about math, so he was like, yeah, okay, leave me alone. So that was another thing that didn't make sense to me, and I think we're really trying to make much easier, is like, if you want to do this, to actually publish like a NPM package, which is a machine learning project, and enable people to fix data bugs, then it's just really super hard to do it right now, even if you really want to. So, well, I guess it's easier now with DagsHub. It was super hard back then. I'm trying to make it easier all the time.
Yeah, I think these are great details that you guys are sharing, and I love the way how Guy comes up with his experiences that he has had, because I think that kind of brings and builds a strong base for something what you guys have created. And I think those small experiences kind of have piled up, and then you've built such a huge space for all the data scientists, machine learning engineers, which is DagsHub. And you are kind of obviously wanting to solve that problems which you guys have faced early in your careers, and that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for sharing all those details. We have a lot of questions coming in, a lot of DagsHub, #DagsHub. I know for a fact where I love the t-shirt and the swag from DagsHub, and we about the t-shirt as well, and the logo. Kate is here. Hey Kate, thanks for joining. And she says she needs to hear the story behind the doggy.
Okay.
Yeah. So, hi, Kate. The story of the dog. So basically, for all the nerdy people here, a DAG is a directed acyclic graph. Part of the the logic behind the name was that the DAG sort of describes the data pipeline, and so it's basically the structure that encompasses the entire project. And the idea of like a DagsHub is like the place where the data pipeline and all of its component exists in one place. And so that's the origin story for the name. And then the reason for the dog is because of Snatch, which is, if you haven't seen this movie, it's a Guy Ritchie movie, very, very recommended. But Brad Pitt plays a character with a heavy accent who asks like, do you like dags, mate? So that's basically why we went with a dog. And the mascot, which Guy could like, for those of you who get the swag, you'll see the full mascot, but you can also see it on our website. It's a half dog, half fish. And that's because in Hebrew, the word dog means fish. So we went for, and we're both from Israel. I don't know if we mentioned this, but so that's basically the background for the logo. And then the last thing I'll say is the specific dog is, so I drew this logo. We haven't updated it yet. Maybe at some point we might, but I designed it. And when we started DagsHub, I took a dog, like I adopted a rescue dog, and I tried to draw her as well, but she's a mixed breed, and I'm not that good of an artist, so I couldn't really capture her in a character like her caricature. And so I settled for drawing her best friend, which was a Boston Terrier. So that's how we got the dog. And this is not a French Bulldog, which is a common mistake. It is a Boston Terrier.
Wow.
No. Dean missed 3 aspects. One is later we were told that DAG, wait, it stands for Dean and Guy, and we're like, no, we didn't think about that.
Wow.
Another,
It's a coincidence, we promise.
yes, another is
Okay.
that Git itself is also a directed acyclic graph, so it also ties in everything in life that is important is a directed acyclic graph.
Wow.
And
The octo.
the last thing is, yes, like it wasn't really intentional, but the GitHub logo is a half cat, half octopus, the octocat, and we have a fish dog.
Yeah. So at some point we'll make them, we'll draw them swimming together. Now that we have like a deeper integration with GitHub as well, so it's appropriate.
Okay. This fantastic story. And definitely a lot of detailing that you guys have put behind the logo, the name, and it everything kind of makes a lot of sense. Also, yeah, there was a question around the inspiration of DagsHub. You've already spoken about that. Also, one quick question that I had, and this is a funny one, a light-hearted question for you both. Do you both still fight as best friends, brothers now after being founders of DagsHub?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things, now that we've been working on sort of on startups in general, on DagsHub specifically for such a long time, we've had the experience, to meet with founders who are like literally siblings or married couples or entire families that are founding a startup, and that's not common, I think, but not super rare either. And I think that that's a big question. Like when you get into this is, you could argue that this is as binding, if not more than marriage. And so you need to make sure that you can work out differences in a healthy way. So I mean, I think that the thing for us is a lot of times founders are like friends are worried about becoming maybe co-founders or business partners because they're afraid that it will like ruin their friendship or things like that. But I think for us, like conflict resolution has always been pretty rationality based, and not as ego driven as some maybe other teams might experience. And so like being able to admit that you're wrong and have a healthy discussion is something that at least I'm proud of us being able to do. And I think that this extends, by the way, to the entire team at DagsHub. Like I think one of the things that we write as like a core value on our website is the ability to have like a rational debate and not like take it personal, but just being able to disagree on something in a healthy way. So yeah, we disagree sometimes, but I think it's very it's a healthy disagreement.
I think Dean was more worried in the beginning that no, we're good friends, maybe it will ruin it, and I was like, listen, first of all, like I know we're both very rational people, as Dean said, and we don't get it wrong. It's not that we sit and debate quietly. Sometimes we yell at each other, but the yelling is it's not taken personal. Like we know why we're yelling. There's a point to it, and I have no problem telling Dean like, okay, shut up, because I have a better point to make, and the other way around. And the thing that like I was very chill about it, saying, listen, like there's no reason to think it's going to be bad. We know how we communicate, and the thing that we have is I am very sure that none of us is going to do something that is like there is no incentive misalignment, let's say. Like we both understand that we are not just two people who met and we're going to screw each other over for when like $500,000 is on the table, and then like yeah, let's take it and screw the other guy, and because we're never going to talk again, whatever. So I think it was very good, actually.
I'm pretty sure about that, because obviously you guys have known each other since like almost since nursery, as you guys say. So it's more on the lines where you both are each other's best critiques. You will be, obviously transparent to each other and have those things coming forward, and that also kind of brings a good vision to the business, I feel, because you both will have like open discussions and there's no thin line there. So that makes a lot of sense. So great question there, Manisha. Definitely brings a lot of things for us. I wanted to take a question from YouTube, but before that, I have a question. So, what are like the common challenges that you see folks, actually see in data sets, and how does DagsHub help in that? So, want to learn more about that.
In data sets?
Yeah.
Yep.
You want to go?
The big problems is having a data set, number one. Number two is cleaning, basically you have usually all kinds of sources of data and different formats, and we use this table until that date and that table and this until this date. And in some places we would kind of manually set some properties, and you have to interview a ton of people to understand how to even make sense of it. And this is not even related to machine learning. We have analytics data, and it has all of those problems already. Wait, I'm trying to make this graph for this feature usage, and we used some different event name in the past, so now we need to unify them. It's just a giant mess.
I'll just add that in general, and obviously we're answering this from a biased position, right? Because we've already built tools to help people work with their data sets. But I think that one of the realizations that we had is, if you sort of try to boil this question down, one of the topics that keeps coming up is that sort of data sets are living things, right? A lot of times, especially if you start from an academic background, data sets seem to be static. Like, you have a dump of data, it's never changing. It's ideally like a standardized data set. All your competitive labs in the world use the same data set so that they can prove that their paper is like 0.1% better than yours in some specific task. But in reality, now with data-centric AI and all of those things, I think it's coming more and more to the forefront. But the idea is, you don't create a data set as a one-time event and then just use it, right? You start with collecting data, you try to annotate that data, maybe you improve data collection, and so the data changes over time. And so I think that a lot of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry today sort of go back to that single notion that you need to stop treating data as a static asset and start treating it as a dynamic asset. And I guess three things that we see come up a lot. So data collection is the classic one. It's the equivalent of traffic jams for regular people. If you go to a random data scientist and ask him what is his biggest problem, he would probably say that one of the biggest problems are he needs more data, right? So that's always a problem. I think there are tools that help you tackle those. The more unique your data is, the more complicated the collection process is, the harder time you're going to have. And I think that there is a room in the future, and we might dive deeper into this, but there is a room in the future where people would actually be able to share data and enrich data in the same way that today we share and enrich each other's code via open source. But I think that that's sort of something that is more reliant on network effects and community. And I think that the two more technical problems are understanding how data changes. So you can think about this from a feature perspective as data diffing. So if your data set changes all the time, you need to get context on what is the difference between the current data that you're working on and some data that you worked on a few months ago that maybe worked better or worse for your model. And so I think a lot of the things that we're doing with DagsHub is data visualization in the context of being able to compare different versions of your data set. And the other thing that is a bit more recent for us, but data annotation, which basically is in between, right? You have data collection, many times that data is unlabeled, and you need to add sort of the context of what is it that you want your model to be able to learn. And so for a lot of the history of DagsHub, we didn't have any capability relating to this, but we kept on hearing users talking about this because it always happens in the vicinity, right? You collect the data, and if DagsHub is the place where you start working and iterating on your data set by training a model and updating the data and all of those, then there's a step before that, or between those two steps, again, data collection and sort of working with the data set, that is adding labels to that data. And we kept speaking to users about this, and they were saying things that were not intuitive to us when we started out. So one of those things was labeling data is not hard. Like, the challenge is not adding the labels. The challenge is tying the labeling process into the broader machine learning lifecycle, right? And so what they were spending most of their time on was, how do I get my data to the labeling solution? How do I validate the labels after they've been done? And then how do I get the labels with the data back to where the data scientists are working, so that they have a not too much overhead before they can start training a model. And so we, a few months back, this is like the beginning of the year, so January this year, we launched DagsHub 2.0, which among other things includes DagsHub annotations, which is basically, we didn't mention this, right? But DagsHub is like GitHub for machine learning. And so what we're doing is we take awesome, best of breed, open source tools, and we integrate them so that instead of spending time on reinventing the wheel, so in this case, I'm going to be talking about Label Studio, which is an awesome open source solution for labeling data. Instead of spending our time on rebuilding something like Label Studio, which doesn't make sense because some smart people already did that, we spend our time thinking about what it means to work with Label Studio and the rest of the machine learning lifecycle. So in our case, we also integrate with Git, of course, and DVC for data and model and versioning, and MLflow for experiment tracking. So what does it mean to work with these tools in like a cohesive way? And so back to the labeling, the data set management story, and I'm sorry for this long answer, but we took Label Studio and we integrated it. So the labeling part, like adding annotations to your data, it's exactly the same as if you were using Label Studio without DagsHub. But what we did add is we added two features. The first is the ability to synchronize your data from DagsHub to Label Studio with a click of a button. So you don't need to move your data anywhere. If it's pushed to DagsHub, you can start labeling it. And the second is when you finish labeling your data, you have a commit button, which wouldn't exist in the regular version. And you click that, and all of those annotations are committed back as a version to your DagsHub project. So the whole labeling process becomes basically two clicks of a button. And that's sort of, I think this symbolizes the added value that DagsHub brings throughout the lifecycle. Like, that's what we're trying to do.
I think just to make this point clearer, like when Dean says it's committed as a version to the DagsHub project, we don't want to have a thing called a DagsHub version. It's a Git commit. It's a Git branch. So like, then the thing we offer on top of that is now you can do a pull request where you see the actual labels and you can comment on the labels, like you can draw bounding boxes on the images and say, I think you missed some spot, whatever. But the point is that now you have Git flow. Like, we take the tools and tie them to the Git flow. And in the end, you can say, okay, this label data looks good. The model can be trained on it, and we can see the performance, compare it to the old version, compare the data, compare the notebooks and experiments and everything, and say, cool, merge this to the main branch, and hopefully like have an automated deployment of the model on top of that with your favorite CI tool.
Amazing. I think those are definitely, some of the most common challenges that all the data scientists and the data professional kind of face, and you guys have identified it that well and kind of brought together and integrated tools to make sure that it is kind of solve for them. Also, on that note, I do have a question around obviously how many tools have been integrated, but before that, let's have our first winner announcement. Let's keep the ball rolling there as well. Let's see and have this cool raffle running. We have 13 folks. For those who are joining us late, we'll be announcing the first winner now and one towards the end of the show, and the winners get those cool swag which Dean and Guy are wearing there. So don't forget to type in hashtag DagsHub, and let's do this. Let's do the drum roll here. I've entered myself. Obviously, I'm not eligible for this, but I wanted to give it a shot. Okay, congratulations, Rajni Bhandari from YouTube. Feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and we'll get the ball rolling. So we have our first winner, but that's not the end. Yeah, congratulations. You still have the opportunity to win a swag. So type in hashtag DagsHub and you'll enter the raffle. All right. Also, yeah, I was just asking. Obviously, since we were on this topic of you know tools, how many tools are integrated with DagsHub?
So yeah, I'm trying to remember now from my head the amount of integrations we have. Um, like, I guess listing them out. Yeah, you wanna?
Every repo has under the settings page a tab called integrations.
Yeah.
And there's a wizard to activate every integration. So there's that. But
yeah, but generally speaking, like I'll do this in the order that we launch these integrations because that's the way I'm remembering it. So obviously, Git has been from the get-go. Like you could say that our core belief is that version control should exist in machine learning. And I know that I feel like when we got started, this was still somewhat contentious to say. But now I feel like most people agree with that. So Git was the first integration. The second integration was DVC. So DVC is short for data version control. For those that don't know, you can think about it as sort of an extension for Git. So it relies on Git's version control for its own version management, but it lets you manage larger files like data sets and models, and then also adding sort of pipeline management capabilities and things like that. So that was the second integration. Then we had MLflow, which was for sort of experiment tracking. Now we support like all of the MLflow commands and components, but basically it's the core capability there. I think is you could think about it as experiment tracking. Then we had Jenkins for automations. So it's equivalent to GitHub Actions and things like that, but open source. We in somewhere in between there, we added like support for most of the cloud storage types as first class citizens. So this is like maybe getting into the weeds a bit, but one of the things that we do is if you can see your code on GitHub, on DagsHub, on a DagsHub project, you can see both your code and your data as if it was code. So if you have 1 million images in your data set, you can view each and every one of those images at sort of very fast, like small latencies. And so when we originally launched this, we enabled users to either push their data directly to DagsHub. We call this DagsHub storage, or connect external storage. So it could be S3, Google Cloud Storage, S3 compatible storage, and we keep on adding more and more integrations on that front as well. Then we had Label Studio, so for data annotation.
New Relic, you forgot.
Oh, New Relic as well, which lets you do like monitoring and alerting. And I think last but not least is we were integrated with like all of the Git server providers. So in the same way that you can connect external storage, you can also connect to GitHub and GitLab and Bitbucket. But we just recently, like last week, we launched DagsHub Connect, which is sort of an advanced integration with GitHub that lets you, among other things, mirror not just your code, but also pull requests and issues and comments from GitHub to DagsHub. So the use case for this is like, for example, GitHub does not do notebook diffing very well. And obviously it doesn't present your data at all. So imagine you have a project on GitHub, but you want to diff like 2 versions and see notebook diffs and see data diffs. Then with DagsHub, you can see those diffs, but still merge the pull request on GitHub, enabling you, for example, to use GitHub Actions. So you get basically the best of both worlds, and you can work across platforms in a convenient way. And so that, I think those are the integrations. I hope I'm not missing anything. But yeah, those are the core integrations.
Yeah, I think that's important. And my meta answer, I guess, is we always try to take the most fundamental kind of low-level tool that makes sense for a task. So because we rely on Git and not some kind of custom protocol, we are integrated with everything that supports Git.
Yeah.
You can use any CI/CD that knows how to work with Git repos. You can use it with DagsHub. So we get a lot of questions like, are you integrated with such and such? And I'm like, yes, like it's just a Git repo, pointed at the Git repo, it will work. Like, so Jenkins is a good example. We developed the Jenkins plugin, so like to get advanced capabilities, but you could still use it with just plain Git repos. And we also have integrations with Bitbucket and GitLab, just because put in the URL and we can mirror them like it's just a Git repo. As Dean said, we have special connections with GitHub in the future, maybe also with GitLab and Bitbucket, but that's just added capabilities because a lot of people wanted to use, let's say, GitHub Actions on pull requests. So yeah, that's a long way to say a lot of integrations, and also DVC is very simple and low level. That's why I liked it, and I wanted to use that because like a lot of people have already developed integrations for DVC, let's say with Airflow. So if you want to take your DVC pipeline and run it on the cloud, you can just use the existing Airflow connector and fire it away. Like we don't need to develop a custom DagsHub Airflow connector or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. This makes a lot of sense, and quite a lot of integrations that are already at DagsHub. So
the soundbite is DagsHub is integrated with everything.
That's very true, and I'm sure many more to come. So can't wait for that. And congratulations on the recent GitHub integration. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense with the integration. We had that question coming in the audience as well. Recently, DagsHub had an integration, so what capabilities, and you've already shared that, Dean. So thanks a lot. Also, let's take a few questions from the audience here. One question from Kalyan is aligning data governance plus data engineering plus data science plus SMEs on projects. How do we put all these together in a structured way? What do you think, Dean?
So I'm not sure I know what SMEs mean.
That would be subject matter experts, maybe.
Okay. So we're talking about like aligning the different roles. Yeah. So I guess like all of the things that we're talking about are somewhat related in the sense that the core to all of these, the core to building like decent integrations, to building sort of a consensus or agreement within across like different team members and things like that, is having a good source of truth that sort of everyone agrees on, right? So the idea is like the advantage, for example, of Git compared to more like previous versioning systems is that it's distributed, right? So the advantage there is that multiple people can work on the same time at the same time. They're not blocking each other from working on things, and then you sort of resolve conflicts in the end. But on the other hand, the reason GitHub came to be, right, is that even if you're working in a distributed way, you still need a place where everyone goes to do those reviews and agree on what's actually going to go to production, right? And so I think that the way we're thinking about aligning all of these different roles is that you need to start by having a single source of truth. And that single source of truth needs to include all of the relevant components. Now, that is not to say that we are also sort of fervently against the approach of trying to do everything yourself. I think that the strength of DagsHub is in its integration, in integrations, and not the fact that we're trying to rebuild everything and things like that. So you might have like data engineers working on pipelines that are moving data from your app to a data lake, right? And with that data lake, you might use different tools that are managing that data and things like that. But the idea is that the moment you're starting to work on a data science project, and that's sort of like our tagline, if you go to the homepage, is where people build data science projects. So if you're starting to build a data science project, everything from the raw data until the trained model should be at least logged on DagsHub with a version attached to it. So that creates a source of truth. And I think that creates sort of a technical alignment between people. And then the other thing is, how do you build a knowledge base around this source of truth? So a lot of times, and this is unrelated to, GitHub or whatever tool you're using, a lot of times the challenge is that the information around a project is built across multiple platforms at the same time. So you might have GitHub, and then you review your code, and then you use some experiment tracking tool. There are many that we can name, and you keep some information about the experimentation process there, and you maybe have your data in a third place, and you keep some information about the data set there. And now if you want to align the different people, then you have to start sending them across like different areas. And also, of course, you have a wiki or your Notion, right? So a lot of the information is there. And so people find themselves like, oh, you're looking for that, that's on Notion. Oh, you're looking for that, that's on S3. Or you look at, and that causes a lot of grief for teams. Basically, a lot of times the solution to this is just people give up and they redo a bunch of work. Like if you speak to teams in large enterprises, a lot of times their main challenge is like, we had 2 people running a 2-week processing step because they didn't realize the other one ran it a week ago, right? So that's a lot of resources gone down the drain just because there wasn't a single source of truth, just because the knowledge base wasn't built in a cohesive way. And so, yeah, that's basically our approach to this is mainly those 2 things. And I think that's what we're trying to build into DagsHub.
I want to point out a few. I tend to go back to the kind of concrete features when thinking about this thing. So data engineering, I'm kind of putting aside because it's whole crazy, complicated area, which is very resource constrained. So a lot of very cool product ideas you might have, you can't do very easily because you need to do what's cost effective. So I'm putting that aside and saying, okay, I have the data engineers, they're in the end delivering something that is usable for the data scientists. And I still need to have, as Dean said, like the governance and the reviews and everything. So like there are a few patterns that are useful. Like for example, having a data catalog repo, let's say. You can have Git repo, which is only for, I took a snapshot of the engineered data at some date, and now I can generate statistics on top of it. I can maybe have some attached code to process it in useful ways and save all of that in a version. And then I can import that specific version of the data into other repos which train models on top of that data. And the connection is there. Like I can see and have a link in the DagsHub UI directly to the data catalog version. And I can upgrade it with a DVC command, like take the latest version and rerun the pipeline on it. So you kind of have data governance at that level, and also the NPM I described for neural network parts, except it's like NPM for data sets. And for the subject matter experts, so then the data scientists can train the models and everything, and in the end, generate outputs which are much more easily viewable on DagsHub. Like, for example, we let you see the data itself, like video and audio and images and even table, diff it, and you can show that to your subject matter experts, and they can say, like, actually mark parts of the data and say, here is a problem, like your gun generated an artifact on this part of the ear, and that version of the data, of the generated data, was better, and all kinds of stuff like that. And I think one thing which should be utilized more is notebooks which are generated, like auto-generated notebooks, where the outputs are a report that is saved as part of the Git commit. Then you can have, let's say, a pull request with a notebook that shows a bunch of relevant samples and information and everything, and you can send your subject matter expert to review that pull request. So that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I think fair enough. Definitely brings great insight for Kalyan, and you kind of have aligned a lot of projects, and that is a great detail shared by Dean and Guy. So thank you very much. Also, I'll be taking last 2 questions from the audience, and these are very interesting questions, and both are from YouTube. So let's take this one first from Dakshin Basra. What are the most important tips you would like to share with us that will help us build great data science projects? Maybe Dean, what do you think?
So I think that I guess the answer is it depends, right? Like if you're trying to create projects that are mainly for building out a portfolio, which we definitely recommend people do, especially if you're getting into the business, versus something that you're working on because you're passionate about it and you're just trying to solve a problem in your spare time. So I think in general, I guess the tip for both that is always universal is start with a problem that you understand and with data that you can work with, or with a clear idea of how you're going to get that data. But I think that there's some like a lot of times you, as a beginner especially, you're tempted to go to Kaggle, take a data set that everyone is working on, Titanic, like codename Titanic, or
Yeah.
MNIST, or something like Fashion MNIST, and then do a project and just showcase something which is like let's say an advanced tutorial. And I think that that's not bad, especially if this is like your first project, you're still learning the ropes. That's great. But if you're looking for something that can prove you're sort of ready to take on an industry role and things like that, I think like we are in a lot of groups with team leads and things like that. One of the tips that they always say that they look for when they're looking at GitHub or DagsHub accounts for users that are applying for their teams is like, is there an end-to-end description of a project? Like, here's a problem that I thought of. Here's how I collected the data. Here's the processing that I did. It's like a case study. You don't just take some data set that you found somewhere, run a model, show that you got like 99% accuracy, and go home. Like that's not the hard part. The hard part is understanding where that data exists, especially if you think about this, like imagine a problem that you would like to solve that data science can solve or machine learning can solve. Many times the thing that is going to stop you from actually doing this project, even if you're super enthusiastic, is like close to your heart, close to home, whatever, is just that you can't find data that is good for that. And that is a good imitation of a lot of the challenges you have in real life. So I think that's one sort of recommendation where if you're a beginner and you want to do something which is closest to a real life data science project, I think that's something that you can think about and see if you can solve. And there are some great ideas about this. By the way, I also think that posts about these projects are the ones that have a higher tendency to become viral, because people are actually excited about this and it's not like a toy problem. And things like that. So just also, if you're trying to build like a following and things like that, I think that's also a good idea. I'll let Guy give advice as well, so I'm not hogging the mic.
I honestly feel unqualified to answer the question. I guess my generic advice is to always start with the stupidest, simplest thing you can, and then gradually improve, and don't start with something complicated.
Okay. Yeah, this is great answer, Guy, definitely, and fantastic details, Dean. Also, okay, I will definitely want to take this question from the audience, but I think it's time for us to announce our second winners. I'm sure the audience is eagerly waiting as well, and so am I, to see who the second winner is. Let's do the drum roll again, and here we go. All the best. Let's see if my name comes up. Okay, Aditi, congratulations. You win.
Congrats.
Yeah,
Wait,
you win us.
I forgot to also enter the competition.
Yeah, you already have one, Guy, and that's very cool. Yeah, so my question that I wanted to obviously pick was this one from Kate. Can you share your vision for where you see DagsHub in the next 5 years? I really like this question because I want to know how you guys are visioning not only DagsHub but data science as a field and data science projects. Where will it be, in the next 5 years? Would love to hear your thoughts.
No, you can say.
Wow. The phrase, it's really hard to forecast stuff, especially about the future. So about the world in general, first of all, I hope we don't get killed by AI by then. I'm one of the people who tends to worry about that. But assuming it takes more than 5 years. So I can say more confidently what I hope DagsHub will be. and the vision is really the GitHub for machine learning. Like just like you know where you go to find open source code, it's on GitHub. And if you find some developer tool and it doesn't have a GitHub page, you're immediately suspicious. Like, why? It's even like probably lower quality, because when people build stuff in the open, they tend to invest more in like the internals and in the documentation and make it more stable and everything. So yeah, I want DagsHub to be the place where everyone knows it's the easiest, most convenient, and just best place to do data science, open source data science. And what else do I want to say? Hopefully, like I have a theory, which is that open source data science so far has not really been a thing, in the sense that, yes, people open source their code, but the collaboration aspect doesn't really exist. Like you can't come in and contribute to something. So I hope that will be different, because we make it different. Like, yes, you'll see actual projects where people come in and contribute data and code and everything, related to data science projects. And I hope that happens whether it's DagsHub or not. I obviously hope it's DagsHub, but I think it would be best for everyone. Happens anywhere. So that's kind of my big picture.
Awesome.
Answer.
What do you think, Dean?
Yeah, so I think like the one-liner for what Guy said is the one-liner that we have on our homepage, which is, in 5 years, when you start a new machine learning or data science project, you're doing it on DagsHub. Like, there's no question about it. That's sort of the very, very summarized vision. I think that the thing here is it's divided into two. So one thing is what Guy said about like having the place where open source data science happens, and you know that when you're looking for a project, you find it there. But the more specific point here is we're not just talking about the output, because a lot of times it's very easy, especially in machine learning, to focus on the model, but the model is not enough for you and I to actually be able to work on the project together. And so what we're focused on is how do we make it so that DagsHub is the place where people come to actually work on machine learning projects, not just publish their results. Like, publishing the results might be a subset of that. It's not that I'm saying we're not going to do that, but I think our focus is how do we enable the process to happen under one roof. And I think that that's sort of the very, very high level vision. Yeah, like become the de facto standard, basically.
I think we're seeing, by the way, a lot of will to do it. Like if you see the OpenAI is ironic name, as I'm sure many people know, that they keep the models very closed. And like, to be fair, I understand why they do it, but every time they release some exciting new model like DALL-E, immediately you get like open source re-implementations of it. And I think that shows that there's a lot of will to do it, and the open source just needs to be defined better for data science as not just code.
This is amazing. I think the vision and the mission for DagsHub is super strong, and not only just about DagsHub, but you guys have like a vision of the open source community going out there and learning a lot. So which makes a lot of sense. And I love the conversation here. I think, Dean, Guy, thanks for doing this. Really loved it. I just have one last question for our audience as well. That would be, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about data science projects, about DagsHub, and about what problem and what mission are you guys on, which is the best place? Dean, where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so first I'll just say, because we have to, no, I'm just kidding. We are hiring for a ton of different roles. And so the first thing is you can apply on LinkedIn. You can go to our website, like dagshub.com/careers. You'll find all of the same job descriptions. You can apply there. We are sort of eager to work with people. Some of those jobs are remote, so yeah, go ahead and apply, and we'd love to have you join our team and take part in this journey from the inside. And then in general, like I think the place where we're most active as DagsHub is our Discord. So we have a Discord channel.
Nice.
We answer questions there, but we also just like to hang out and talk about anything, not just DagsHub related.
If you go to dagshub.com, you will see the icon to join the Discord on like the header and
Yeah,
the header.
every page has it, like next to the search bar. You can click it; it will guide you there. So yeah, we're on Discord as well, like Facebook, Twitter. I guess we can add the links in the description when we post this. But
Facebook, not so much.
yeah, not Facebook. I meant LinkedIn and Twitter. Sorry.
Fantastic.
It's me going old school. Yeah. So LinkedIn, you can follow us here, and then also YouTube channel. So as Ravit said when we got started, I'm recording the MLOps podcast. The episode comes out roughly once a month. So
Nice.
you can find the existing episodes on our YouTube channel, as well as a bunch of other videos that are sort of educating on how to use DagsHub. So I think those are the main channels that.
Yeah, I think you guys have covered a good ground. For those who are not on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
that you can find them. They can find you on Discord. If not there, YouTube is the place. So DagsHub is everywhere. Go guys, follow them, and definitely I've shared a link with you guys. If anyone who's wanting and looking out for a job, DagsHub is hiring a fantastic company out there. I know Dean and Guy since a long time now, and I can assure you would be in best hands and learn a lot with this team. But once again, thank you again, Dean and Guy, for joining the Ravit Show. I can't wait to do a 2-pointer session with DagsHub very soon. But all the best and see you very soon.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, and thanks to the DagsHub team, by the way, for providing all of this good stuff for the world.
Yeah,
they're not with us today, but
definitely
hard work.
Great work, DagsHub team, Dean, Guy, everyone, and thanks everyone for joining us.